If you love entertainment, current events, and Hollywood, don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha Bean, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today we have a special guest.
Eric Litman, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be talking with you.
I am excited to talk to you too. Thank you so much for coming on and thank you for your time. You know, I love talking to creatives like yourself, and I find it so fascinating, like the journey, like what makes us do the things that we do. I always say, I love going back to our childhood. I think everything starts there, right? And what was little Eric like growing up, and were you always drawn to the creative space, or what drew you into that world?
Well, yes, I was always very fascinated in the arts growing up. When I was in high school, and early college, I grew up in Philadelphia.
Nice.
And I was a very serious art student, painting and drawing, specifically drawing, a little bit of sculpture. I had a big support system surrounding me. I had very good teachers. My parents were very encouraging and supportive of my interest in the arts. And I did a lot of. Everyone thought I was going to be an art. I was going to focus my career in art, specifically drawing. That was really my background. And I just became in that time. I became interested in photography, production of film. I was always going to the movie. Every weekend was going to a movie, either with my father, or my family, or my friends. I was always at the movies. And around this time, I was offered some art scholarships to go to college, and I wanted, and everyone at that point in your career, everybody's like, well, I want to be a film director. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And then, I became exposed to some movies, and there was a movie that was very influential to me called JFK, directed by Oliver Stone. And I was fascinated with the topic. It was an amazing topic. But there was this weird thing in that movie I just couldn't really put my finger on. Like, it's just, there's this rhythm to it. It's just the juxtaposition of images against each other, and it's just something about it grabbed me. I didn't understand what I was looking at, but I knew this was sort of what I wanted to do. So I turned down a lot of all these art scholarships. I decided to go as an undergrad to Temple University, and I became more exposed to filmmaking as a whole, not just being the director, but all these different disciplines. Cinematography, lighting. I was fascinated with lighting. I thought that was, until I burned my finger really bad. I said, this isn't for me.
Oh no.
But then, and this was sort of when Avid was becoming when digital editing or nonlinear editing was becoming more standardized. Mm-hmm. So then, this was still, film editing was the way to go. And I was interested in that, but it was a very tedious process. You had to have extreme patience. You had to be very organized to understand how to do that practice. And somebody exposed me to, I want to say, Premiere, something along those lines. And I was always a computer geek, and I understood computers really well. And it was just fascinating to me that I could do these things very quickly on a Premiere, or ultimately then became Final Cut Pro, and then ultimately Avid.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't understand editing, but I thought it was completely fascinating that you could do, and amazing that I could be doing these things. I could shoot a movie on my video camera, bring it into the film lab at Temple, and edit it right there. And then ultimately, I got a system at my house, and I was able to do very rudimentary editing at my home. Um, so I did all that, and then I did dabble on the East Coast in the film community. I did a lot of corporate stuff. I taught a little bit. Um, I explored. We talked a little prior to this, but I explored a little bit of doing some government work, and it was all interesting. It was all things that I found fascinating, and it would have been a good career. But I had a teacher when I was in college who was, again, I had a really good support system in college, and I came out here for the summer for an internship, and he took me on a tour to AFI, American Film Institute.
Nice.
And when I was taking these tours, I saw an American Film Institute at the time was the only school or a graduate school that had specific studies and specific disciplines. And at this point in my career, transitioning from college into professional life, I knew that editing was where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
That was really my passion. But I knew I still had a lot to learn. So I ultimately applied and got into AFI as an editing fellow.
Nice.
And it was a very hard couple of years, really, really learning the craft of editing. And I met a lot of fascinating and very influential people in my studies, and then it really readied me to enter, I guess, professional Hollywood life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working steadily ever since.
I love that. And I love that you said that, you had mentors. I feel like that's a big thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. That I think it helps tremendously, right? Having someone
Yeah,
is rooting for you.
absolutely. I had a lot of mentors, a lot of different people in my corner, every step of the way through I would say every facet of my scholastic and professional life. There was always somebody there I could ask questions to, advice, and ultimately mentor me.
Mm-hmm.
In my early days as an art student in grade school, in college, in my professional life, as an assistant editor, I assisted a lot of great editors that had multiple decades of experience, and they would share that with me. And they were, they were very supportive of moving the craft forward, passing their knowledge on to me. I was the next generation, and because that's part of our responsibility to shepherd and also mentor in editing specifically, because it's a creative field, but there's also a technical aspect to it. So there's a lot of things. There's just a lot of avenues that you can go down that you have to understand when working as an editor. And the most important piece of advice that I was given by a very supportive editor that I worked for a number of years was he told me, and it was sort of like a life-changing moment when I realized what he was talking about in terms of editing, is that editing is a language.
Mm.
It's much like English. There's rules of how you speak this language, and you have to understand how to put a sentence together and how to compose and how to be articulate.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about language, in all languages, I guess, do this, is suddenly slang comes into the play. You're using language. You're speaking in non-traditional ways. You're breaking all the rules to create shorthand, and you can apply that concept to editing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a fascinating way of looking at it.
I love that. I love that. And you have so many like amazing credits. You've done so many things. When you get the project, like I love asking this question. I think editor has a different process. Like how do you approach the process of when it comes to certain projects that you get? that comes to your table. And also you have to think about there's deadlines, there's, so you can't just do too much. You have to just kind of get it done whenever it's done. So I'm sure that's an added pressure. But what's your
Yeah.
process like?
Well, there's a number of things. Initially when you're meeting people for the first time, uh, you're gauging whether these are people you want to be around.
Mm,
And more often than none, I always find these are really cool people. They're
yeah.
doing really cool stuff, and you're like, and getting to know them is part of the experience.
Mhm.
And again, the same editor talking about language also said it's very little to do with the project. It's more about the collaboration and how you work with people and whether you enjoy being in their company. And are your goals aligned with theirs?
Yeah.
So once I sort of see where everybody is and we all sort of agree that, this is going to be a good working relationship, um, they start share. I like to hear what the producers and the directors, the writers, what their vision is.
Yeah.
I like to hear what they have to say, what they think, and then I can start expanding on that. I personally don't like going. I always have my preconceived ideas, but I try to be as flexible as I possibly can with those. Because if you start putting, a square peg in a round hole, it's never going to.
Yeah.
I could take their ideas and start to put my take on it,
Yeah.
try to make it work to ultimately reach their goal
Yeah.
or their
You
vision.
yeah, I mean, and I mean, excellent work, obviously, because you're still working
Thank you.
and you're working on, it's so funny that you're working on this show. I think it's called Dope Thief.
Yes, yes.
And
I finished Dope Thief a few months ago. It's on right now
yeah,
on Apple, and I'm extremely, extremely proud of it.
yeah,
Brian Tyree Henry, Wagner Mora, um, directed and produced. It was produced by Ridley Scott, and he directed the pilot. And Peter Craig was the showrunner, writer, producer, and he also directed an episode. I had a wonderful time with everybody on the show. Marcella Saeed was my director on a number of my episodes. Episode 7 comes out tomorrow,
all right.
and I'm that is my favorite episode. I just love that episode, and she's just amazing. I loved working with Marcella. She's just one of my favorite directors.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, I'm curious. Do you have like when it comes to editing, do you have like a favorite kind of genre, a type of films like you like to edit? Are you more into like the horror genre, you're into that, or does it matter? Does it you could do a romantic film and you'll do it?
You know, I tend to do a lot of science fiction.
I love that.
Uh, I'm on One Piece right now. I did season 1 for Netflix. I'm on season 2 right now. Uh, Dope Thief was a total departure from that world. It was a crime thriller, some black comedy in there, or dark comedy, and it was so refreshing to be a part of something like that. It was very dark. It was very violent at times, but One Piece is a complete polar opposite. It's an adventure story. Everybody is. It's a comic. It's based off of a very popular manga, and there's lots of different aspects to in terms of genre in that show. I worked for a long time on the series called Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D,
Hmm.
and on that was in terms of genre, I would say that had everything. It had comedy, it had comic book, it had visual effects, it had romance, it had action. We had special episodes. Like we had a film noir episode that I got to cut.
Yeah.
Uh, we had 80s callback episodes. There was references to pop culture on that stuff. So, and in terms of how he played the comedy, in sometimes I would say more often than none, it was very throwaway.
Okay.
We didn't lean into the comedy. But then every once in a while, there would be something like, nope, we're going to lean into this. We're going to let this. We're going to go for it. So that show definitely kept me on my toes. And again, wonderful people that I was on that show for 7 seasons.
Wow, that's incredible.
And they shot in LA, which now is not too common. And I could go on set, I could talk to the director, talk to the producers, talk to the actors. It was your quintessential Hollywood production.
I love
And
that.
it's always going to have a special place in my heart on that show.
I love that. Um, do you ever like, I mean, obviously I'm sure you have these like creative, I guess, differences or disagreements in the, editing room, or how do you handle them? How do you approach them? I'm sure there's times where you feel like, when you're probably collaborating with someone, it's like, well, I have this idea, and they're like, well, I think this is different.
Mhm.
How do you kind of get?
Well, in my field as an editor, I personally find it's very important to try anything and everything.
Yeah.
It's very important to be open to try new ideas, exploring the footage, what this route will take you. You might hit a dead wall, a dead end.
Yeah.
That's possible, but you're going to learn about something regarding the material and what can be done, what can't be done.
Mhm.
You might say, no, this didn't work. Let's just, put it aside. And then a couple of revisions later, you're doing something and you're like, you know what? That aspect of what we did that didn't work, we can take a portion of that and now put that into this version. And suddenly it all works.
Love it.
So I think it's very important to be very willing to try anything. That's sort of your job. It's very and to be open-minded. More often than not, when someone pitches me an idea in my head, I'm like, oh no, that's not going to work. But I always try it, and usually it works.
I love that. I love that. So I have a fun question that I love asking every guest on this show.
All right.
It's like it's a tradition at this point. But the three levels of influence: money, power, and respect. And if you could choose
Mhm.
only one of those things, which one would you choose and why?
Money, well, you could always use money. Power, I mean, that's nice. Uh, I'm going to say respect. And the reason I would say respect is uh, when I'm working, I let my work speak for itself.
Mhm.
I want to be judged on whether I did a good job or bad job. And I want people to, and I find that if you work hard, you collaborate well with people,
Mhm.
you execute their vision, you elevate it with your own ideas, you gain that respect from people. And people say, I want him or her for the next show. And
Mhm.
I think that's important. As a filmmaker, I always want to work on different shows with different people and have great collaborative experiences. Um, I always I like when I wrap a show and I walk away going, I'm going to miss every one of these people.
Oh, I love that.
And I like that. I mean, it's sad when it happens. I want to go on another show with them, or I didn't want it to end.
Yeah,
Uh, but to have that feeling means it was a great experience. And that's what I always want.
that's beautiful. I like that. I like that a lot. If you could go on a coffee date with anyone,
Yeah.
I would say particularly, let's say editing for sure. Editing,
Yeah.
or you know what, filmmaker, why not? Living or dead, who would it be, and what would you ask him on this coffee date?
Wow. That's a tough question. I have there's so many filmmakers out there that I just admire. Stanley Kubrick, Francis Ford Coppola, Sylvester Stallone, being from Philadelphia, it's sort of part of your DNA. Um, you know, I think the questions I would ask are how did you how did you push forward? There's always an obstacle. How
Mhm.
did you overcome that obstacle? Stallone is very, very open about how he was broke and he had to do all these certain things to make money, like even selling his dog for a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, and how he stuck to his guns when he made Rocky. They didn't want him to play Rocky,
Hmm.
and he was he didn't have any money, and to really stick to his guns and just know that this was a make it or break it moment for him, and he had to be strong to say no, I want to be the lead. How did you? I guess the question I would want to know is how did you not second guess yourself? How
Mm.
was you confident in your how were you confident in your decisions?
Right.
Um, Stanley Kubrick makes
Great.
2001, which to me is a masterpiece, but also like The Shining. Such a departure from the book.
Right.
Uh, that's pretty bold considering what he was doing. I mean, Stanley Kubrick, I think at the time was probably a bigger name than Stephen King, but still, the book was very well regarded as a classic.
Yeah.
So to put your own spin on it like that is interesting. And how did you get that confidence to,
Hmm.
to do something like that?
That's great.
Francis Ford Coppola, he
Um,
makes The Godfather. I don't think he really wanted to make that movie initially. I think he was resistant to it.
hmm.
And these are just amazing, amazing movies. And how did he overcome the creative indifference that he had to a movie and make it into such a deeply personal masterpiece? Not just once, but twice.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those. That's great. Those are also great. Great. I love Stanley. Oh my God. One of the greatest of all time to me. I really
Well,
love
I
Isaac.
think all those reasons that I suggested,
Hmm.
um, they apply to filmmakers in every avenue of everyday life.
Yes.
There's how do you overcome? I get sometimes I get notes. I go, oh, I don't think this is going to work, or you become a little negative about it.
Hmm.
I got to dig deep here and figure out how to execute this note and make it my own. And I want to care. I want to own this note. I want to make it great. I want to make this show great.
Yeah.
And that's as a filmmaker, and especially as an editor, it's your job, it's your responsibility, and that's what people are looking for. That's what people ultimately, I feel, respect you for.
Hmm.
Um, it's. I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's that's real, and I think thank you for your honesty. I feel like it's so often I talk to people in the field especially in this creative field, whether it's editing, filmmaking, acting, whichever. I feel like everyone, like you said, has those moments of like doubting and like kind of like how do I keep going? Because it's such a competitive and saturated industry. Like there's so many people that are doing the same thing. And so how do you set yourself apart um, to continue to work and have jobs? And I think a lot of times when I talk to people, I find that like a lot of people in a certain positions don't want to talk about that part. And I love talking about that part. I think it's so necessary because we do show the wins. We only show our positive images on social media. It's very like, hey, this is life and jazz hands,
Right.
everything's great. And, we could be having a mental breakdown, really. But we, choose to pull forward. How do you overcome? And that's a great question. This is really like, I really love this because how do you continue to move forward, even in the space and after all the things that you've accomplished?
Mhm.
How do you continue to top yourself?
Well, one, I try to keep a level head. Thank you for the compliments. Very
Absolutely.
much. It's very kind of you. Um, I'm very proud of what I've done. I'm very proud of the shows. I'm extremely proud of Dope Thief. I'm extremely proud of One Piece and my time on, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all those things. But I try to I try to focus in the moment, try to focus on my work. I try to focus on the people that I'm working with specifically in that moment. I try not to think too far ahead. I do my best, don't always succeed, but I do my best to not dwell on the past.
Yeah.
Uh, I also, like everybody, as with all my wins, there's lots of fails. And that's part of the learning experience. And a good friend of mine who's also a very very accomplished editor, he would, and I steal this line from him all the time. Everything is a learning experience,
Mhm.
and that is very that's always very important to me when I pick myself up, lick my wounds off, and clean myself off, and try to and then move on to the next day. I do everything I can to learn why whatever I did didn't work.
Mm.
And it helps me succeed the next day. And I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So I do tend to do that a lot. I will recalibrate what I was doing so I can ultimately get that win.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, and I love, this, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think too, what a lot of young people and a lot of people that listen to the show that are even trying to get in, they're always saying like, you know, these are very accomplished people. Because I feel like people look at like, oh, I want to get in this and I'm going to be getting an Oscar, or I'm going to get this award, and it doesn't usually work out that way. And it's like, you just have to put one foot in front of the other. It's just, and guess, hopefully whatever project you get is going to lead to a bigger project. And, I mean, one can hope with all the, the strikes, actor strike happening, the uncertainty around a lot of things. I think a lot of people
Yeah,
are feeling the, like what's going to happen next kind of thing.
yes, it's a tough time right now for Hollywood, LA in general. Uh, I think we're yeah, I think things are. I'm hopeful that things change. I'm hopeful that more projects start up again and production in LA resumes. Um, I'm seeing certain things happen that make me excited about the future. Um, but what I what I always try to tell people when I was first starting out in LA in Hollywood, um, I was given. I tell people this all the time. I joined the Editors Guild. I was working nights as a nighttime assistant editor on reality, sports reality, and I had a really good education, especially coming from AFI. So I
Hmm.
sort of knew how to handle myself in the technical environment. And what I would do is they would hire, I guess it's safe to say this now, it's been a long time, but I would go to work and I was the nighttime assistant. I was by myself, and my job was to digitize all this footage, prep it, and get it ready for the editing team in the morning.
Hmm.
And I would come on at 6 in the morning. I'd get there at 6 at night, and I was supposed to be there till 6 in the morning. What I did was, and this is back when we used to have patch bays, I would wire all the avids and I would digitize all the footage and I'd be done in an hour. So I had 12 hours to kill. So after a few weeks of sort of like sitting there for 11 hours, I said, well, this is just silly. And I would do all, and no one was questioning what was happening as long as the work got done. And
Hmm.
I would just patch it all together, get it done in an hour or two, and then go home. And then every day they go, great job. So what I would do during my days is because I joined the Editors Guild and I knew I wanted to work in narrative film.
Hmm.
So what I did was in this book that they gave us at the Editors Guild had contact information of every editor, every editor, post supervisor, and everybody who's in the guild
Yeah.
was in this book. And I started at A and went to Z, and I emailed everybody.
Love that.
And I did it a number of times. And eventually, there was a lot of discouragement there. There was like, well, yeah, I'll keep you on file, or good to know, or thanks for reaching out, or I don't have anything. And you get discouraged, of course, but I kept pushing forward. And eventually somebody did reach out to me and say, hey, I'm doing this picture. I could use you. doesn't pay anything. Are you interested? And you go, yep, I'm there. And that led to one job to the next, and then the rest is history.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I did it. And I don't know how that works now in terms, I don't know if the Editor's Guild still gives you the book, but the lesson that I always try to uh, pass on to people is that it was the perseverance. I
Mm-hmm.
was very committed to moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was able to sort of hack my job at my night job and get everything done in an hour or two, it allowed me the time to do this other thing that was really important to me, which was reaching out to everybody in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and my responsibility was to my job, though. I wanted to make sure that I got everything done.
Mm-hmm.
I just did it in record timing, which they never knew. I guess they'll know now, but
Yeah, it's
that
like,
that was a long
hey.
time ago.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, this is so real. I think it was, I was talking to a few of my actor friends, and, a few were like, I'm leaving this business to do something else. I'm like, sometimes you have to pivot, and that's okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
mean that you give up. And I feel like that's like the misconception of changing direction. Sometimes you're like, oh, it means you're gonna give up. And if you give up, no, sometimes you have to have another job to, you know, uh, you know, uh, keep acting going so that you can
yeah.
always look the part, or do these things, or travel to do these auditions. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. Like, on top of that, it's like now we have AI, and everyone's freaking out about it. But I'm like, and just embrace it. It's here. There's pros and cons, of course, and I'm curious to as an editor, do you find AI useful? Like, it kind of cuts down the work process, or do you like think, oh no, like they're doing a little, it could be, I'll be out of a job or something if AI gets any more intelligent.
Um, that's a good question. I haven't had a lot of experience with it just yet. I've heard things here or there. Some things are concerning. Some things I'm not sure exactly what to make of it just yet. Um, you know, I- I haven't formed my opinion on that one just yet.
Mm,
I know certain things down the line could affect. I guess my biggest concern about AI in post-production is how that would affect entry-level jobs,
mm,
because so much of my career and becoming an editor or an assistant editor, whichever you desire, is the journey and learn and lots of learning experiences. I had worked those entry level jobs and under very experienced people to learn the do's and don'ts and how to do certain things and work and life experience and all that wrapped into one makes you a great editor. So if AI takes away entry level jobs, that's a little concerning. Uh, but I don't know exactly I don't know exactly where that's going to go just yet.
yeah.
But it's something we should all be aware of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Do you feel like the industry is changing for editors in particularly, like more opportunities for editors? Because I mean, I think it's different for each, everyone's acting is going to say probably not, maybe it depends on what kind of jobs they have if they're working actor. But I'm just curious of that world. Like, how is it hard? Is it like, I don't know, like right now, even with,
Well, it's very good. I've been very blessed. I've been very, very fortunate. I've been able to go from one job to the next. I was just in the
beautiful.
right spot at the right time, and just got very lucky. Uh, it's been a hard time for LA, and I have a lot of great friends, a lot of talented friends that should have been working through all of this,
Mm,
and for whatever reason, just circumstances presented themselves. Um, I think the industry's changing. I think the industry's still trying to figure out what it's going to be.
mm,
Um, so I don't know what's ultimately going to happen. We're tough times economically, just the country in general, the world in general.
Yeah.
And that affects everything.
Yeah.
These are all good questions. I don't know. uh, it's concerning when you see so much lack of production. I think it's very important, and I really do hope that LA is able to bring production back with tax incentives. And I think I see, the stay in LA movement that's happening. I think that's very important, and I hope hopefully our state legislators figure out ways to attract more productions that come here and make the tax incentive better than everywhere else. The fact that we have Georgia and Alabama and all these different other states and that are attracting productions, and it's not LA. It's concerning. I loved when I was on productions here in LA, and I've been on a few times where the cutting rooms are right next to production.
Yeah.
I could just walk the set. It's just so much fun, and if you become a fan of, like, when I was on Marvelous Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I was there for 7 seasons. I knew a good amount of people on that show, and you all become a small family, and we have wrap parties and holiday parties, and and you get all kinds of gifts, but then you're all working on you're working on a cool show. Everybody wants to do great work, and then the show airs, and you're so proud of it, and whatever was happening in your life at that point, it's like sort of a memory, and I don't know, it's just a cool experience. So yeah, so the short answer is I hope things come back. And fingers crossed.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, this was so great. What keeps you balanced? What do you do to, like, what's your daily thing, like outside of editing? Like, what's your like, how do you balance it all?
Well, you try to have, editing working as an editor. It's this long hours, and so you sometimes work really, really long, early in the morning to late at night. And, with work from home it happened a few years ago, which to me, I love. Now I'm a hybrid. So I love going into the office when there's working with people. But when I'm cutting dailies, I just prefer to be home. Just cut by myself. And because I enjoy it so much, if I'm working off the clock, it's not that big of a deal to me because I'm at home. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's fun. And I can explore the footage casually. So, you have to figure out, and I don't do this well all the time, but you have to figure out a good work-life balance. So I try to, maybe work out in the morning or take a walk with my dog, or when I was working on, I've worked on some shows that have a long commute. And I'll go from where I live to wherever the show is. And sometimes I would leave really early in the morning, and you kind of go, well, what can if I leave 10 minutes early in the morning, I could maybe find a cool coffee shop and grab a cup of coffee. And, what's the new fad coffee shop in LA? I would do things like that. So, you sort of make a little adventure out of it, and try to enjoy the moment. Living in the moment is also very important as an editor, because you might be working long hours.
Yeah, you got to peel away and get away from the screen. I bet that's a lot.
Yeah. Also, what's cool is if you work with really cool people. It's just sort of coming back, but it used to be, when, like, Walking Dead was on, when it first came on, we would all watch that show, and then Monday morning we would all come in and we would all have our water cooler conversation and talk about, well, what'd you think of this? Don't tell me, I haven't seen it yet, and everyone like runs away, and it was just a fun conversation. Or the haunting, the Mike Flanagan show, The Haunting on Hill House.
Oh yeah, that was a great one.
It was an amazing show. And then we were sitting there and someone says, well, did you see all the Easter egg ghosts? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then suddenly we're doing Google searches and we're all hanging out. So those are, when you have this camaraderie in the cutting room, becomes a second family, becomes fun.
Yeah.
You're working with your friends, and
Absolutely.
that's what's actually the most fun about filmmaking, but also editing in general. Is the collaboration and camaraderie. That's pretty special when it happens.
That's beautiful. You feel like you're gonna get back into art at all? Like maybe one day, like maybe do a
Well,
book.
I still doodle. I still do. My parents have all my art hanging up on their walls in their
That's
house,
cool.
and you know, uh, I miss it. I guess, when I was in high school, I remember I had to do still lives and paintings and all that. And I would do it, but I would always like do it 3 or 4 times. I would do it, erase it, do it all over again. And it was much like me in editing with the undo button. But the thing that I would always get frustrated when especially, I remember towards the end of my high school art career, I was a very serious art student, a very serious art class in high school. And I remember I did a painting, and I guess at the time it was good. But I was frustrated with it because it was like, well, in my mind, it wasn't coming to life. I wanted it to move. I wanted it to feel like a movie. And that's the polar opposite of what a painting is supposed to be doing. But that's when I sort of realized I got to take my creative output and apply it towards film,
Love
because
that.
I wanted my art to do something that it just wasn't capable of doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. This was great. Wow. I just really enjoyed hearing about everything that you do, all the your
Well,
journey.
thank you.
Definitely.
Absolute pleasure talking with you.
Same, absolutely. Where can people find you on social media to follow everything you have going on?
Well, I'm on Instagram. I like to post a lot about my work. Litman Design is on there, and I think it's Litman Design on Facebook. Uh, Probably the same on Twitter, though I don't use that, or X. I don't use that too often, but yeah, you could find me all those places.
Nice. Do you have a favorite quote before we close, like that you that comes to mind that on the days that are kind of uncertain or kind of feels a little slow, but when you think about it, it keeps you going?
Um, well, like I said, I'm a Philadelphia guy. Uh, Rocky always comes to mind.
Love it, love it.
Rocky 2, especially when he was really down on his luck. Um, you know, I think when they he Sylvester Stallone says this all the time, but he he always says keep punching. And Rocky is your truest definition. The reason I love the movies Rocky so much, not just because they're boxing, which I love, or Philadelphia, which I'm always going to be fond of, but there is a true underdog story there that everybody can relate to, and even when everyone's flying high and they're all these successes, there's a lot of missteps, a lot of things that they just failed at or screwed up or just didn't execute properly to get them to that spot that they are now. And it's important to stay strong. And as Rocky said, as Sylvester Stallone says, just keep punching, because it just means just keep moving forward. Don't give up. And I think that's important. My career as in all the different avenues of art that I've done, um, there've been a lot of moments that like everybody, where you doubt yourself. And what set me apart from others is that I just didn't give up.
That's right. Love that. Thank you so much. This was beautiful. I had a great time.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.